Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid on another beautiful Monday morning, day after an annoying weekend in which my playoff game was canceled because the referees didn't show up, and the he said, she said battle that ensued of assigning blame to why they didn't show up, all that annoying crap. But anyways, back to Wisconsin football, and we are in the bye week between Alabama and USC, so that would be a great opportunity to ask for some questions from you guys. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to answer them from here. So if these questions and answers seem maybe a bit rehearsed, it's because this is now the third time I've tried to record this video, because of first time I recorded, there was so much annoying sound in the background that I had to find a completely new area to do it, and it's still, people are working, so I don't think I'm ever going to find a quite quiet spot. But then I recorded an entire video without turning on the microphone. The same annoying microphone that died 3 minutes into the Alabama third quarter breakdown, in which I had to re-record that one. Moral of the story, folks, don't spend a lot of money on cheap electronics, especially money that you don't really have. But anyways, let's get into it. So I've got notes to make sure that I answer the questions that you guys ask. I'm still going to paraphrase because I'm not going to sit here and put the paper 6 inches from my face and read this. But here we go. So the first question we're going to go to is, this is a multi-part question in a big, long, great statement on my Substack. And I'm going to paraphrase it here for simplicity purposes. And hopefully I'm getting to the point of the question that my reader was asking. And it's essentially this: is Phil Longo's offensive approach this year the more conservative time of possession type offensive approach a symptom of trying to keep the offense on the field as long as possible so that the defense and the issues that the defense are having is not on the field? And is that where some of the disconnect is coming from? And so what I would say to that is, if that's what the objective has been, then yes, I think they're doing a very good job of it. But I also want to push on with that a little bit. And Phil Longo's version of the air raid offense has always had a bit of a ball control type component to it. You know, the idea of a tempo-based no-huddle offense in football is not always, let's get up and try to run 120 plays in a game and snap the ball at 28 seconds every time and just go speed. Tempo is not always speed. Tempo is both fast and slow. What the Badgers are doing is they are cutting out the unnecessary parts of a more traditional offense. And to them, it's the huddle. It's unnecessary. They can communicate everything that they need to without the benefit of a huddle. So that's where that component comes in. Also, when you play a no-huddle, a tempo-based offense, you are controlling not only the tempo for you, but you're controlling the tempo for the defense. So if you're not substituting, if you're not rotating, and you keep the same people out there for an entire series, the defense doesn't have time to substitute. So you can dictate how they substitute. And then when you do substitute, even though the rules specifically say that that they will wait to give the defense enough time to substitute, it still causes defensive coaches to play faster in their head than they had originally intended. So when you add that aspect of tempo to a more ball control version of tempo, you get what we have now. How do I put this? I don't think that's necessarily 100% what we're going for is because the defense is so bad. We're playing ball control. I think that is a mentality that defensive coaches sometimes have, is they want a offensive equivalent of what their defense does. And then, which leads to, the question, is the relationship between Phil Longo and Luke Fickell as fractured as everyone says it is? I don't think it's fractured. I think they have a good working relationship, because I think if it was truly fractured and Luke Fickell was flat out saying, no, you cannot do this, Phil Longo would have left after last season, because at the end of last season, he could have easily said, well, Wisconsin didn't have what I want. They were unwilling to invest in what I needed. It's time to go. I'm going to go to XYZ program who can do what I want. He didn't do that. He stuck with it because he believed that, he believed in the program that Luke Fickell was building, and he believes that they could work together. And I believe that they can. I just still think there is a disconnect in what Phil Longo wants to do and what Phil Longo needs him to do. All right, so if it looks like there's been a giant cut between the end of the last question and the beginning of this one, because good Lord, trying to find a quiet spot to walk in a city that's really not that busy on a Monday morning. I am walking by every guy mowing his lawn, every groundskeeper, every construction site known to man in this small town. But anyways, we persevere. And on to the next question, and this is on the defensive side, and that is similar to Muma last year. A lot of fans are speaking badly about Jake Chaney. Does the inside linebacker coach deserve much more of the blame? Muma making an NFL roster makes me very suspicious of our coaching. So, we'll start with Muma, and then we'll come back to Jake. I think it's awesome that Muma Njongmeta made an NFL roster. He did not have a good season last year. He did even worse at the combine. But he found a coaching staff that saw something in him, and they found a role. And he has a very, very specific role with his future with the Bengals. And that role is to be a B-gap to B-gap, inside the tackle, downhill, first and second down run stopper or short yardage run stopper. That's what he was best at Wisconsin. That's what his body type will allow him to do in the NFL. And that's going to be the limitation of what he does in the NFL. Because of his physical limitations, he's not going to all of a sudden get 3/10 of a second faster in the 40 and better at agility and be able to do everything else that a middle linebacker does in the NFL. He has a very specific role. Now, unfortunately, what that meant last year at Wisconsin is Mike Tressel and Luke Fickell wanted him to do a role that is more encompassing of what more linebackers can do. In fact, it is the ability to diagnose, read gaps inside, and then be able to flow outside. It's the ability to diagnose run and pass, and to be able to get into a pass zone, or run with a linebacker, or a running back, or up a seam. Stuff that, in a lot of defensive systems, you would expect a linebacker with his experience to be able to do. He couldn't do it. And last year's defense exposed the flaws in Muma Njongmeta's game. What it did, though, if we want to see the plus side of that, it just showed exactly what he could do, and the Cincinnati Bengals found a role that fit his skill set, and that's why he might be able to stick in the NFL. So that will lead to people saying, well, why didn't the coaching staff then carry over more of the previous defense than just alignment? Why didn't they use the same reads, footwork, etc.? Because it was a better fit for the players who were already in the system. Well, let's put it this way. The players who were already in the system were part of the reason why the previous coaching staff ended up getting fired anyways. So you're bringing in a new staff not to do what the guys before them did that got them fired. You're bringing them in to do what they want to do, their vision, okay? And Jim Leonard's not the reason why Paul Chryst got fired, but you know what I mean. So to dumb the defense down and play what they did in the past just so Mumajong Meta could have a better year in his final year at Wisconsin at the expense of the rest of the team, what you're essentially saying is that year one last year should be year zero and complete wash, and then we're starting over new this year when a bunch of those upperclassmen are gone. It'd be the same thing now with, keep going for this year. Then after this year, all of the upperclassmen are gone, and you're starting fresh. So what you're asking here is we should give Luke Fickell and his staff 3 years, and then his program starts. So then you give him 3 years after that. So what you're saying is, 5 years down the road is plenty of time, and we're going to give them that time to rebuild. I know that's not what you meant, but that's what you said. So you have to let the coaches who come in coach what they were brought in to do. And sometimes there is a mismatch of hardware and software. And those who can be taught will be taught, and those who can't be taught will have seasons like Moomin did last year. Which leads us into Jake Chaney. Jake Chaney's problems are not physical. Jake Chaney is a skilled linebacker. He is athletic. He can run. He can do all the testing. He can do everything that on paper makes him a good linebacker. However, he, from a football instincts point of view, is bad. He is easily distracted by eye candy. He is slow to recognize plays, and then when he does, he overcompensates to come back to where he should have been in the first place. And these bad instincts can be hard to coach out of somebody. When it's ingrained into your football DNA, changing things up can be hard. We saw with guys last year, didn't work, and some guys mentally checked out early in the season. I give Jake Chaney credit. I guarantee you he had options to go other places. I'm surprised that he didn't end up at Colorado, where his dad is part of the staff. So I give Jake Chaney a lot of credit for sticking it out and believing in himself that he could learn from the coaching staff and improve. And unfortunately, in my opinion, I haven't seen it. And when one key part of your defense is making the same fundamental errors, that flows backwards. So it's having an effect on the outside linebackers. It's having an effect on Jaheim Thomas next to him. And it's just creating, a cascading group of problems. So, like I said last week, I think, in my opinion, he needs to become a situational guy and put in the younger guys who might not be there yet 100% system-wise, but they are being brought up within the system. So then their mistakes are easily able to be coached out than somebody who is 4 years into his college experience and trying to teach him new things when his instincts won't let him do it. All right, so the next question we have here, and it's a pretty simple one, is how do we get the balls to the wide receivers more? And when you look at the play calling this year, they're actively trying to do that, because in year one, you saw a lot of the base plays that make up Phil Longo's passing game. The snag concept, the wheel concepts, the the mesh, the four verts, the curls. You know, what builds the basis of his offense. Now in year 2, we're starting to see the complements to those base plays. We're starting to see the Y cross breaking back to a sail and breaking back to a curl. We're starting to see variations coming off of the four verts and the snag, where we have the snag routes running different angles. We're seeing variations to the follow concept, a bunch of these different concepts that we ran last year. We're starting to see 1 or 2 man adjustments and variations to anticipate the movement and the reaction of defenses. And but the problem is, and it comes down to the same thing I've been saying the entire time, is execution. And if we're talking about dialing up deeper plays to the outside, it's the same thing as always. Receivers have got to get open, and the offensive line has got to provide protection long enough to allow that to happen. And I think with our... You know what I told you about the noise? I don't know if you guys can hear that, if you're going to hear it on the video, but I'm right next to a guy trimming his bushes. Okay, now that the bush trimmer is slightly behind me. Anyways, it's going to come down to the receivers executing. And, you know, I think some of the people that we were expecting to, and Phil Longo was expecting to contribute and help with some of the vertical stuff, like Quincy Burrows, and some of the intermediate and inside stuff from Joseph Griffin, isn't happening because, you know, Burrows is hurt and Griffin has his eligibility issues, so it's not much we could do there. But they're trying different things. They're using different formations. We're putting some guys like CJ in motion, and we're trying to scheme up different ways to get them open. But I think the problem is defenses don't respect those guys enough that them moving around or being in different formations actually changes anything. So which is why you're seeing a lot of the complementary routes and stuff like that coming off of the slot guys who we know can get open. So it's a building process. I think Eugene Hilton Jr. is going to get a lot of playing time next year as a true freshman, because I think he adds some of that dynamic that we're missing. So we'll have to see. All right, so we got 2 more questions here, and both of them are a bit more on the philosophical side, or the, you know, the big picture side. But let's get into it. So the first question here, and I'm going to do this one now, because then the last time I tried to redo this, I did it last and ended up talking for 20 minutes, is basically, I want to read this one, make sure I do it right. What did I do with it? Right there. Yeah, a lot of people see this downstretch and saying we're going to be the next Nebraska. Is there a chance that we could turn into what Michigan did under Harbaugh? And that's a very good point. Let's start with the Harbaugh thing, and then we'll finish with Nebraska. One very important thing that Jim Harbaugh had when he came into Michigan was the support of the university and the support of the fan base. He was thought of as the savior of Michigan football. And while a lot of us were excited that Luke Fickell came in, a big part of not only the fan base, but I'm guessing in the alumni base, were hesitant, at best, hostile at worst, that a non-Wisconsin guy was coming in to lead the program. Should Wisconsin have found their Jim Harbaugh? With no offense to Jim Leonhard, there is no Wisconsin equivalent of Jim Harbaugh yet. Jim Leonhard could be that in 10 years when he has experience elsewhere of being a head coach. Maybe. But if you want a Jim Harbaugh type program, you've got to support him. But again, he had the support of the university and the fan base, which bought him time, which allowed him to take a different approach when it came to recruiting and staff building. You combine that with the already world-class facilities that Michigan football had, which is going to get into the question we're going to get after this as well. His ability to build a program was easier, and then that he took the right approach, and that the fact that he's coached at a very difficult university to win at football-wise and was able to translate that success into the NFL, bring that NFL success back to college football. It was a perfect storm. Could that be Wisconsin? Of course. Because the transition from Paul Chryst to Luke Fickell in terms of everything football-wise is not as drastic as people want you to think. Again, it just takes looking at the football game and comparing it and actually looking at it to see there's not a massive difference. We just hear buzzwords. We hear air raid and we hear 3-5 and we get pissed off when how much is there actually been massive changes. Anyways, so it could very well be that Luke Fickell could pull a Jim Harbaugh, but he needs support from the fans and the university and the alumni to be able to allow that to happen. Are you going to give him the time that you gave Jim Harbaugh? Because it took him, 7 years? Long time. And I mean, I remember Graham Mertz absolutely destroying him back in 2020. So that's what it's going to take from that end. But comparing the comparison to Nebraska always gets me because, and we're going to turn around and start going back this way. The comparison to Nebraska always gets me because it is a very easy comparison to make, but an absolutely wrong one to make in terms of football. Because from a football standpoint, Nebraska was going, again, this is 20 years ago. Football was very different back then. But Nebraska had built their program from a football standpoint on the triple option. And to go from the triple option where 95% of their offensive linemen had probably never pass blocked a day in their life before getting to Nebraska and while they were there, to then try to build a program with those same players in the West Coast offense, in a pro-style offense with a completely different approach to everything from strength and conditioning to practice structure to, most importantly, on-the-field football production, was a complete, it is literally like asking me as a right-handed person saying, tomorrow you need to transition into writing left-handed for the rest of your life. That's the difference between Nebraska pre-Bill Callahan and Nebraska Bill Callahan. And they didn't have the transfer portal back then. They had the transfer portal back then, the transition would have went way smoother. And I think the transition going into the Luke Fickell era here has been better because we've had the transfer portal to fill in the gaps and make the transition go more smoothly. But the transition between Paul Chryst's air raid system and the air raid, or Paul Chryst's pro-style system and the air raid, is not as huge as you'd think, because one, we're still running the ball a lot. We're doing the same blocking schemes. Yes, we're not going under center, but as we've said many times, going under center doesn't change anything. Okay? And then a lot of the passing concepts have similarities. It's not night and day. What Nebraska probably could have been better suited to do last time, back in the day, was slowly transition, maybe transitioning from the triple option power football into Wisconsin's power football, play action, run the ball 50 times a game, play action pass, and occasionally drop back offense. I mean, there's a Nebraska alum who probably could have been a great guy to bring in as a guiding force to build that program back then. He had a different job, unfortunately. So no, Wisconsin's not going to be the next Nebraska because you had to be the first Nebraska to be the next Nebraska. So you're not going to be the next Nebraska. Wisconsin could be the next Michigan if we hit a lot of those points we talked about: support and then and growth on the football field, but given time to do so. There's a lot of programs that have done that. I think Clemson comes to mind, a program that for the longest time was a middle of the pack ACC school. And then Dabo Swinney came in, and then we slowly built up to the called the Clemsoning era of Clemson football, where they would be this team that would always be in the top 10, top 5, and then they'd get to about week 7 and they would lay an egg at home against NC State or something like that. If Phil Longo did something, or Luke Fickell did something like that, would the fans here be able to stand it, even though they'd be going 10-2? No chance. But yeah, everything is a possibility. Which leads into the final question. And again, I'm going to try to get where the glare is out of my face so I can see what I'm saying. Is the last question. Again, I'm going to paraphrase it because by now I've completely destroyed my notes. Is I've mentioned in the past that there needs to be more of a commitment to NIL, to facilities, etc., for Wisconsin to take that next step as a program. Will the university acknowledge that that's an issue, and will they support what needs to be done to do that? And that all depends on whether the university, the administration, the fan base, and the alumni acknowledge the fact that how college football is going and how athletics are a part of the academic experience now is a necessary evil in this new era of athletics, and are willing to understand that a lot of the peers that are comparable to Wisconsin in terms of a university are having national success in athletics, like Michigan in football, like Virginia in basketball, are having the same successes, but are still academically prestigious. I think there is this notion that Wisconsin, in terms of the universities, it goes Oxford, it goes Harvard, it goes Wisconsin, and then a river of crap, and then the rest of the world. I think we need to acknowledge Wisconsin's actual place in the academic world, which is a very prestigious university. But then also that prestigious academic universities have been able to build successful athletic programs because those administrations understand how much money those athletic programs can bring into a university, and that can be a part of the university. And what success means to a university as a whole. It's a necessary evil. And like I said in the last walk and talk, we need to make a decision. Is Wisconsin football here to play school, or are they here to play football? Is Wisconsin basketball here to play basketball or to play school? And in the modern age, you can have both, but which side wins games? That's the balance that you got to find. And all that stuff takes money. And when you see schools like Northwestern and their new facilities that put our facilities to shame. And yes, I know we're trying to build new ones, but the most important issue that comes out of that is the mishandling of bricks. And I know the bricks were important, but good Lord, the university could have done a way better job handling that, and so could the fans. We're never going to take that next step. So support comes from not only the wallet, but the attitude of people within the program. So will they make that acknowledgement? Begrudgingly, they're going to have to. Or Wisconsin is going to have a diverging path to choose from. In one direction, it's the Michigans and the Virginias and the Stanfords. And the other direction, it's going to be the Vanderbilts and the Northwesterns. And hell, even Vanderbilt has a national class baseball program. So Northwestern, are you ready to be the next Northwestern Wisconsin? Or do you want to be the next Vanderbilt, Stanford, Michigan, Virginia? That's a choice. All right, so here I am saying that I was going to try to make this one shorter, and we have done that by approximately 7.5 minutes. So I think we're going to call it there. This next week, I had planned to start recording videos on the defense, but now that my season is basically in a limbo, don't know when my game is going to be rescheduled from this past weekend, because there's schedules to be going around, to be played around, and I've got vacation coming up. Don't know, but what I can tell you is we're going to get you the breakdown of Wisconsin versus USC. Going to hope to get you another one of these walk and talks, and hopefully, if I can get some time, you're going to be able to sit back down, do some more writing, get the Good, the Bad, the Ugly series back up and running, and maybe some more from there. But it's all going to depend on my schedule. Again, right now, Dare Raid has to come second. It's a very close second, but till I hit 100,000 subscribers or something like that, I'm going to have to wait, unfortunately. So hopefully you guys have the patience. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making my last walk and talk one of the best viewed videos I've had in a very long time. And by helping me build the channel up this fall. And we're going to keep going from here. All right. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.